We have reached to page 474 in the explanation of the Matn Abī Shujaa. And actually we started this chapter last week. We'll review. So starting from page 474, the author, rahimahullah, said, the punishment for accusing a person of fornication, adultery, known in Arabic as qadhf. So as you know, there are certain sins that carry a hadd, which is known as the religious penalty, the religious punishment, the prescribed religious punishment. And so there is a prescribed religious punishment to accusing someone of fornication or adultery without evidence. So the author said, whoever accused another of fornication, qadhf, deserves the prescribed punishment of qadhf under 8 conditions, 3 of which must exist in the accuser, which is that he be pubescent, sane, and not a parent of the accused. And 5 of these conditions must exist in the accused, that he would be Muslim, pubescent, sane, free, and chaste. The prescribed punishment for the free is 80 lashes and for the slave 40. The prescribed punishment for the accusation is dropped in 3 cases: the presentation of evidence, for the accused to pardon the accuser, and to perform li'an in reference to the wife. So that was the matn, that was the text. Now we're going to read the explanation. This chapter pertains to the rules of qadhf. Religiously, it is to accuse someone with committing zina to humiliate him or her. There are 3 types of statements used for that: sarih, kinaya, and ta'ril. Sarih statements are explicit statements of zina, in which one accuses someone with committing zina. And zina, and it means fornication. So these statements are classified into 3. The sarih, which is a statement that is explicit in attributing fornication to someone, and the examples are going to come. The second is called kinaya, which we'll mention. It's like a figure of speech, kind of like a figure of speech. And then you have the ta'ril, which is the innuendo or insinuation. So for the sarih, it is the statement that does not bear any other meaning in the Arabic language. So if someone uses an explicit sarih statement of qadhf, then he deserves to get the religious punishment. He deserves to get the prescribed religious punishment. The kinaya statement can bear the meaning of accusing someone of zina, and it can bear another meaning. So the second type, kinaya, which we'll say is like a figure of speech or like an ambiguous statement. But the definition of it is the statement that in the Arabic language it can mean zina, it can mean fornication, and it can mean other than that. The third type are ta'ril, which is insinuation, statements that are not related to accusing someone of zina, but the person uses them to insinuate that someone committed zina. So that third one, they're not a statement that they are they're not a statement that itself, let's say, carries a meaning of fornication, but the person uses the statement to insinuate that the person committed fornication. So let's start with the first type. The judge Abī Shujaa, he started with the first type, which includes the explicit statement of zina. If one accuses another person with zina in an explicit way, by saying you committed fornication, you committed zina, or you are a fornicator, or you are an adulterer or adulteress, then this person deserves to be punished with a specific punishment mentioned in the religion for qadhf. As for the kinaya, which can bear the meaning of an accusation of zina, and it can mean something else, it is like to say to another person, you are an enormous sinner. So when someone says to another person, you are wicked or you're an enormous sinner, that's not explicit in accusing him of fornication, because perhaps he is saying that this person, let's say doesn't fast Ramadan, so he's calling him an enormous sinner because he commits that enormous sin. Or he is accusing him of committing some other type of enormous sin, so he calls him an enormous sinner. So it's not necessarily that when he calls him an enormous sinner, that automatically what's meant by it is fornication. So here, in this case, it depends on the intention of the accuser. So if the person who said to another Muslim, you are wicked, or you're an enormous sinner, or you're a fasiq, and his intention by that was to say, you're a fornicator, yani he meant by it, you are an enormous sinner because you're a fornicator. So in this case, he would get the prescribed punishment. Then he is punished with the hadd, with the prescribed punishment. We do not know what is in his heart. So if he confesses that this was his intention, then we would know it. So the person themselves, they would, let's say, confess that to the Muslim judge, and then the Muslim judge would apply the punishment. The third type, which is ta'ril, originally it does not have anything to do with accusing someone of zina. However, some use it to insinuate the fornication. Like to say when having a dispute with someone, I am not a fornicator, insinuating that the other person is. Another example is to say, my mother is not an adulteress, while insinuating that the other person's mother is. Originally, these terms do not carry the meaning of accusing another person of zina. However, if it is used with the intention of accusing the other person of zina, it is still not counted with the first two kinds. It has a different judgment. So for the person to have the prescribed punishment, he either has to say an explicit statement of accusing the person of zina, or the kinaya, which is an ambiguous statement, meaning it could mean zina and it could not mean zina. So for those two, he would get the prescribed punishment. As for the ta'ril, he would not get it. For the insinuation, he would not get it. The author mentioned 8 conditions for one to be punished with the hadd for accusing another person with zina. 3 conditions concern the accuser. 1, for the accuser to be pubescent, so the hadd, the prescribed religious punishment, is not carried out if a non-pubescent person accuses another of zina. However, if they have some understanding, they would be punished with something else, ta'zir, so that they do not do it again. So if the one who says the explicit statement of accusing someone of fornication, or the ambiguous statement of accusing someone of fornication while intending that, then that person, if they're not pubescent, they would not be punished with the prescribed religious punishment, hadd, but a disciplinary action would be done to them so that they don't do it again. And remember, these punishments are carried out by way of the proper Islamic legal process under the infrastructure of a caliph. It is not something that we do, like for the common Muslim to just take the law into his own hands. Number 2, for the accuser to be sane. So the had, the prescribed religious punishment, is not carried out if an insane person accuses another person of zina. However, if they have some understanding, they would be punished with something else, ta'zir, so that they do not do it again. Same thing as for the one who's not pubescent. Number 3, for the accuser not to be a parent, an ancestor of the accused one. So if an ancestor, such as a grandfather, for example, accuses his offspring of zina, the ancestor is not punished with the prescribed religious punishment for that. This does not mean that it is permissible to do, but he is not punished with the prescribed religious punishment. So if your mother, and if the Muslim mother or the Muslim father, if they call their mother, their son or their daughter, let's say a prostitute or a fornicator or a sodomizer, then the father would not, or the father or the mother, they would not get the prescribed religious punishment for that. Although they are committing a sin by accusing a Muslim unjustly of that. But they don't get the religious punishment as would someone who is not an ancestor. So when they say ancestor, they mean father or grandfather or grandmother. Now, 5 conditions concern the accused. Number 4, or one of those 5, for the accused person to be a Muslim. If the accused person blasphemes, apostatizes, in this case, the accuser still deserves to be punished with the hadd, with the religious punishment. For the accused person to be pubescent. So the one who's accused of fornication, and if they're not pubescent, then the person who accused them of that would not get punished with that punishment. For the accused to be sane, so the accused would not be, so if the accused is insane, he would not get punished with that punishment. For the accused person to be free, so the slave, if they are accused of that, the one who accused them would not get the religious punishment. And for the accused person to be chaste, afif, that is, not to be someone who had a sexual intercourse for which he deserves to be punished with the religious punishment. Because if he is a fornicator, then he is not a chaste person. This state of chastity is still valid if the person has a prohibited sexual intercourse under a valid marriage, such as if the husband has sexual intercourse with his wife while she is in her menses. This is sinful, but such a person is not considered unchaste. If he is accused of zina, the accuser is punished with the hadd. Okay, so here let's clarify that more. So you have a Muslim that they did not fornicate, right? They did not commit the fornication. They did not fall into this thing. So that Muslim is called afif, chaste. So that Muslim, if someone accuses him with these conditions that we mentioned, if he is accused of fornication and the conditions that we mentioned are met, and that the one who did it is not his ancestor, the one who accused him is not pubescent, the one who accused him is sane, etc., and the conditions were found also in the one who was accused, then because he is afif and because he is chaste, then the religious punishment would be carried out. But if in fact the one who is accused, if in fact he was not chaste, if in fact he was actually a fornicator, so in this case, the one who accuses him, he would not get punished with the religious punishment. although he would not be, let's say, allowed to do it without the proper witnesses, he would be sinful for doing it without the proper witnesses, but that one who is accused, or that one who accused, the one who is not chaste of the fornication, that one, he would not be prescribed the religious punishment. Yani that accuser, he would not be punished with the religious punishment. So this is the detail for that. So, the one who is afif, and he's the one who has not committed the fornication. So that's the one who is afif. Now, why did the author mention if the husband has sexual intercourse with his wife, but in a haram way? What he means by that is that it's possible that a husband has sexual intercourse with his wife and he would be sinful. Like, for example, if he has sexual intercourse with his wife while she's on her period. So having sexual intercourse with the wife while she's on her period is forbidden by consensus. So if the husband does that, we say it's forbidden, but by him committing that forbidden act of sexual intercourse, it does not take him out of the status of being afif. Even though he committed the sin by doing that, he is not like the one who is afif. So if the person was an actual fornicator and someone said, "Oh, you fornicator," he would not be punished the religious punishment. If someone says to a kafir, "Oh, fornicator," he would not. The one who says it to him would not be punished the religious punishment. If someone says to a person who's not pubescent, "Oh, you fornicator," that person that said it would not be punished with the religious punishment. If he says it to an insane person, that one would be that accused one, the one who says it to that insane person would not be punished the religious punishment. If the person who accuses someone of fornication, he accuses a slave, the one who said it to him, the one who accused him of fornication, would not be punished the religious punishment. The author mentions additional conditions. He said there are additional conditions for the accuser to do that out of his own free will. That is, to not be threatened, and not to be threatened to accuse the other person of zina. If he is forced to make the qadhf statement, he is not punished with the hadd. So if the person is coerced to accuse someone of fornication unjustly, he is not, the religious punishment would not be implemented on him. For the accuser not to be a blasphemer from outside the Islamic land. If the accuser is a blasphemer from outside the Islamic land, and he accuses a Muslim of fornication unjustly, he is not punished with the religious penalty for that. If the accuser is a free person, then he would be punished by being whipped 80 lashes. As for the slave, even if the slave is a partial slave and partially free, his punishment would be 40 lashes, meaning half the punishment of the free person. This is by consensus. So, and we see this important rule. So, and what's one big takeaway? The youth need to be very careful. The youth need to be very careful with the types of words that they use with each other. Because nowadays the youth, they throw around certain types of slurs that they accuse the person of fornication explicitly. And if these conditions are met, they are free and sane, and they're pubescent, and the one who they're talking to is sane and pubescent and free and not an actual fornicator, etc., then they would be deserving of that religious punishment, and it's an enormous sin. So people need to be careful with the way they speak. So there's certain words that are used, certain vulgarities that are used, that if the person says them, and they're basically literally committing the sin of qadf. If the accused person dies before punishing the accuser still deserves to be punished with the hadd. The hadd is not cancelled by the death of the accused person. The inheritors of this dead person follow up with this issue to punish the accuser. So if one person says it to another person, and with all these conditions, he says to another person, "You are a fornicator." And then that person who it was told to him, "You are a fornicator," he dies before the one who accused him gets the punishment, then it doesn't get canceled. Rather, the inheritors, they take that right. The prescribed punishment for the accusation is dropped in several cases. So there's certain cases where the accusation would be dropped, the prescribed punishment for the accusation would be dropped. The author mentioned 3 of them, but there are more. To bring 4 trustworthy, upright male Muslims to testify that they witnessed the accused person committing zina. So if they bring the evidence, then they're not punished the religious punishment. If a person goes to the ruler and says that so-and-so committed zina, the ruler tells that person either he brings the 4 witnesses to testify about that, or he would be punished. Because they are accusing the person of zina. If less than 4 witnesses testify, the witnesses will be punished because they are accusing that person of zina without 4 witnesses. So basically, if let's say there were 4 that they originally were going to testify, but then one of them started to doubt and backed out of testifying in front of the judge, then those who went to testify, they would be punished. If someone goes to the Muslim judge by themselves and they say so-and-so fornicated, and then the Muslim judge demands the evidence. He tells him, bring the evidence, and then that person fails to bring the evidence, then he gets punished. If the accused person forgives the accuser, this means to pardon the accuser from all the punishment of the had, prescribed religious punishment. If the accused person says, I pardon him from half of the punishment, or 1/4 of the punishment, or 3/4 of the punishment, that does not work. He would be punished for the full amount unless he pardons him for the total punishment. So in this case, if someone, they fell into the sin, they accused a Muslim unjustly of fornication, and they have no witnesses, and they have no evidence for that. And so now the religious punishment applies to him. But let's say before it was carried out, the Muslim who was accused of fornication, he pardons, he forgives. He says, I forgive this person from the religious punishment. So then the religious punishment would be dropped. And you see how that is different and better than the secular law. In the secular law, if, for example, one person wanted to press charges on another person for something that they did, or even they didn't want to press charges, but the person, let's say, was arrested for something, and the victim didn't want to press charges, but even though that's the case, the so-called prosecutor will bring the charges, or the state will bring the charges, or whatever, the city or whatever will bring the charges. But in Islam, the one who the crime was done to, in this case, for example, if he does not want his accuser to be punished with the religious punishment, he simply pardons him for it, and the religious punishment would be dropped. He would not get the 80 lashes. Yeah, for sure. Yani the sin occurred by him saying the word. Now will, let's say, the Muslim judge convict him of getting the religious punishment or not? It depends, in this case, let's say, on if the victim chooses to follow through. So he would tell the Muslim judge, I want my right. And so the accuser would be punished. Number 3, for the husband to make the li'an statements against his wife whom he accuses of fornication. If he does the li'an, he would not be punished for accusing her of zina. And the chapter of li'an is going to come. It's a very heavy thing. Number 4, another reason is for the accused person to confess that he committed zina. In this case, the accuser is not punished. So, one Muslim with all the conditions accuses another of fornication without evidence, without the witnesses. So he commits a sin. And so he deserves the religious punishment. So he's going to get the religious punishment. But then the one who was accused of the fornication, he confesses to the fact that he fornicated. So that means, so then the religious punishment would not be carried out on the accuser. Number 4, another reason is for the accused person to confess. Oh wait, I read that one. Number 5, also if the accuser inherits the rights of punishing the accuser. For example, if X accuses Y of zina, and then Y dies, and the inheritor of Y is X, so he, X, inherits the right of punishing the accuser, who is himself. In this case, the punishment is dropped. Then we could use an example with people. Let's say that such and such Muslim, we're going to call him Zayd, he accuses such and such other Muslim, we're going to call him Amr, of fornication unjustly. So he deserves a religious punishment. But Zayd and Amr are related in a way that Zayd is an inheritor of Amr. So if Amr dies before the religious punishment is carried out, now Zayd becomes the inheritor, and so automatically the religious punishment is dropped. Alhamdulillah. That concludes that chapter. Now we're going to go to the punishment for drinking alcohol and liquid intoxicants. And once again, let's make this very clear. And especially nowadays it needs to be clarified, because as you know, there are a lot of people that they hate Islam and they try to spread hate for Muslims, hatred against Muslims. And so they take some of the rules of Islam out of context to try and paint the Muslim and Islam in a negative light. So we say that we don't run away from these laws. We confirm them, we agree with them, we believe in them. We know that these are the correct and just laws because they're revealed by Allah. But that doesn't mean that, for example, if I'm hanging out with a group of brothers and one of them calls the other one a homosexual or a sodomizer, or he accuses him of fornicating, or one of them says to a Muslim sister, "You're a prostitute," that doesn't mean that I'm going to then tie him up right there and lash him 80 times. Because these laws are enacted through the proper Islamic legal process. So there's no room for any non-Muslim to criticize the religious punishments in Islam, because look at their secular laws and the ridiculous and unjust and cruel punishments that they have for things that in some cases are not even crimes, first of all. Second of all, oftentimes they ruin a person's life, sending them to prison for decades, and then finding out, whoops, we made a mistake. And still, even the punishment for some of the things that are actually crimes doesn't fit the crime, and it doesn't stop the crime, and it makes that criminal an even worse person. And basically the whole judicial system, or the way that these secular countries handle that, is definitely is not designed to deter crime, and it is in many cases cruel and unusual. But so, those things that they do, how do they do it? Even though a lot of times in their court system, there's a lot of injustice that happens. There's a lot of wrongful convictions. There's a lot of evidence that's ignored. There's a lot of unfair practices. But even though they do that, most of the people in those countries, they agree with it and they accept it, and they say, yeah, if a person, did something what they call illegal, and then he gets like 10, 20 years in prison, they say, yeah, that's fine, that's perfectly fine. But then in Islam, when we say, if a person falsely accuses another of fornication, he gets 80 lashes, then they want to act like it's the most offensive thing in the world. So that's because they have the hatred of Islam in their hearts, and they don't have any objective grounds to oppose these laws. But again, so we say that we do believe in these laws, we don't run away from them, we confirm them, but of course it is through the proper Islamic legal process. It is not, like for example, if I hear a Muslim accuse a sister of fornication, I'm not going to go and tie him up and lash him 80 times right there. Has to be done with the proper Islamic legal process. So now 478, page 478, the punishment for drinking alcohol and liquid intoxicants. Whoever drinks wine or any intoxicating drink is lashed 40 lashes. It is permissible to reach as many as 80 lashes as a punishment seen appropriate by the ruler, and by the legitimate Islamic ruler, not these illegitimate rulers that rule over quote-unquote Muslim countries. It is obligatory to be executed on him in 2 cases: the presentation of evidence or confession. He is not given the prescribed punishment because of vomiting or foul breath. That was the Matn. Now the explanation. Drinking wine is an enormous sin. And it's not specific to wine, meaning it's not specific to the drink that is made from fermented grapes. But when we say wine here in this context, we're referring to all alcoholic drinks, all drinks that contain alcohol, all liquid intoxicants. So not just any only alcohol. The prohibition of drinking wine and the like is mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Verse 90 in Surah Al-Ma'idah explicitly mentions that drinking wine is prohibited. Linguistically, in the Arabic language, the word khamr is the intoxicating juice of grapes. The same judgment of prohibition and punishment applies for the other types of intoxicating drinks. If one puts grape juice in a container and leaves the juice for a period of time, then the grape juice starts to boil without fire, and it starts to bubble up and to fizz, and it rises up in the container. At this point, it becomes intoxicating after a period of time. It calms down, at this point it becomes intoxicating, and after a period of time it calms down. And this is when the people who like to drink alcohol drink it. If it later on by itself becomes sour without anything being added to it, then it becomes halal vinegar. So that is the basic process of how alcoholic drinks are made. So if you take, like, let's say, grape juice or apple juice, or if you take some dates and soak them in water, or you take honey and mix it with water, or you can almost make an intoxicating liquid drink out of almost anything. But basically you take, let's say, the grape juice, you put it in a container. There's a certain way to speed up the process, but basically after a certain point, that container will bubble up from the inside, and then the bubbles, they come down, and then now it's become alcohol. Now it's become wine. Now it's intoxicated sour. Now it becomes halal vinegar. So if you leave the alcohol, and if you leave the grape juice sitting out, it'll eventually turn into alcohol. And then if you leave it longer, eventually it'll turn into vinegar, and then you can drink it and eat it. If an accountable Muslim voluntarily drinks wine or any similar intoxicating drink without any necessity for that, while knowing it is prohibited sinful to drink alcohol, then he is punished with the hadd, the prescribed religious punishment, which is to be whipped 40 lashes, even if the amount that he drank does not intoxicate. This judgment is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ by Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and others. And remember that this whipping, this lashing, is not the type of lashing that would kill someone, or maim them, or would make their organs stop to function, of course the person would be, let's say, hit in a way that it stings, right? Because being lashed on the back, it stings. But the person cannot be hit in such a way that it would cause his death, or that it would cease the function of an organ, or harm the person. So these are disciplinary punishments. They're meant as deterrents. So if an accountable Muslim voluntarily drinks wine or any similar intoxicating drink without any necessity for that, while knowing it is prohibited, sinful to drink alcohol, then he is punished with the hadd, the religious punishment, which is to be whipped 40 lashes, even if the amount that he drank does not intoxicate. So even if he just took a sip of wine, he would deserve the punishment. Even if he, let's say, drank so-called non-alcoholic wine, which is, some people, they say it's wine that the alcohol gets taken out of it. But of course it's going to be like a very, very small percentage amount of alcohol. Or if the person, they just took one shot, or if they took one sip of beer, even if they don't get drunk, they deserve the hadd, the religious punishment. This judgment is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ by Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and others. As for the slave, his punishment for drinking alcohol is half of that, which is 20 lashes. If a person drinks alcohol and is punished with the hadd, then he drinks alcohol again and is punished again with the hadd. And then he drinks alcohol again and is punished again with the hadd. Still the punishment of the hadd remains the same. What was narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, that after the person drinks the fourth time and he is punished 3 times for drinking alcohol, that if he drinks a 4th time to kill him, this hadith is an abrogated hadith. It is an abrogated judgment. This was the punishment, but then the Prophet ﷺ received the revelation to stop applying the punishment of killing him after the 4th time. The rule is that any drink that one would be intoxicated if one drinks a lot of it, then drinking just 1 sip of it is sinful. By saying drinking wine, this does not include sniffing it, for example. So the person would not be punished with the hadd for that. By saying an accountable person, it is understood that if a little child or an insane person drinks alcohol, they are not punished with the hadd. Also excluded from the punishment of the hadd is the non-Muslim. Whether the non-Muslim was a dhimmi in an Islamic state or living outside the Islamic land. So what's the dhimmi? The dhimmi is a specific type of Muslim that has made a contract with the Islamic government that they live under the Islamic rules. So if that dhimmi, if they drink it, they would not get the religious punishment. And we're going to get to that chapter, but it's part of their contract, part of the contract. And it's part of the things that they get for living under the Islamic rules.
You didn't say for the dhimmi and the non-dhimmi?
Or living outside the Islamic land. So yeah, even if he was a non-dhimmi. No, yani because they, and in their religion, they believe it's halal. And they believe that they can drink it. When we get to that chapter, we'll explain more. But basically, because they, in their religion, they claim that they can drink it. By saying drinking but that doesn't mean that yani, it's not. That's not saying that they're not sinful. We're not saying that they're not sinful for that. It's just what's related to the punishment, the religious punishment. By saying drinking voluntarily, this does not include the one who is forced to swallow the alcohol. By saying if there is no necessity, this excludes the case of necessity, which is if the person was choking while eating and he does not find anything to make the food go down except a sip of wine. In this case, it is permissible for him to do that, and because it's an emergency. By saying while not knowing that it is sinful, this excludes the case of the new Muslim who does not know yet that drinking alcohol is prohibited, and the one who is like the new Muslim who never heard that drinking wine is prohibited, because, for example, he lives far away from the scholars even though he was born from Muslim parents. This is the case if the person does not know that it is prohibited. However, if he knows that it is prohibited, but he does not know that he is punished with the religious punishment for drinking it, he would still be punished with the religious punishment. It is not permissible to drink alcohol seeking medical treatment by that. Also, if one is dying from thirst and he cannot find anything to drink other than wine made from vines, it is still sinful for him to drink wine because wine increases his thirst. So, and in this case, it wouldn't be like an emergency situation like the case with eating pork if you're starving to death. Because by eating the pork, if you're starving to death, the person will be saved from starving. But in the case of the person that is dying of thirst, it would not be an emergency situation for this person to drink wine because the wine does not quench the thirst. However, if he drinks the alcohol made from barley like beer, it is permissible in this case, but he drinks a specific amount, not as much as he wants. So that's why they specified to drink other than wine made from vines. And that he cannot find anything except wine made from vines. And wine meaning the fermented grape juice. So if that's the only thing that he has and he's dying of thirst, he can't drink that. However, if he drinks another alcohol that's made from barley, like beer, then in this case it would be permissible, but he only drinks a specific amount. As for medicine paste mixed with alcohol or wine for medicinal purposes, it is permissible to take if one cannot find anything to replace it among the pure medicines, just like taking other najas, filthy medicines when there is no way to find a pure substance that replaces them. It is permissible for the ruler to add to the religious punishment another 40 lashes, making it up to 80 lashes. At the time of our master Umar ibn al-Khattab, the land of Muslims became much larger than before, and many new people embraced Islam, and those drinking alcohol increased during his time. So this is why he increased the punishment up to 80 lashes to prevent the people from doing that sin. The one who drinks alcohol is punished with the religious punishment, had either by him confessing that he drank alcohol or by two trustworthy upright male Muslims testifying, seeing him drink alcohol. So now we're mentioning what is the way that this person who drank alcohol would be convicted of it, either by him saying to the Muslim judge, I drank alcohol, or two upright, trustworthy male Muslim witnesses, they see him drink the alcohol. and they testify to that. If the witnesses are one man and two women, then he is not punished with the religious punishment, because the testimony is not complete in this case. The witnesses have to be two males. If someone vomits and what comes out is alcohol, one is not punished with the religious punishment for that. Likewise, if people smell from a person's mouth the smell of alcohol, this person is not punished with the religious punishment just by that. And even if they find him drunk, he is not punished with the religious punishment for that, because there is a possibility that he committed a mistake. That is, he wanted to drink something else, and by mistake he drank alcohol. And there's many scenarios by which that person it could have been that the person drank it in a way that does not make the religious punishment due on him. I need to double check that case. For certain cases, yes, they have to. And if for certain cases, when the witnesses witness something, they have to go and testify. They're obligated to go themselves and initiate. In certain cases, yeah, I just need to double check for this case. When it involves the right of another Muslim. I mean, that's the case that I know. Like if, let's say someone is claiming something against the Muslim unjustly, and this person has the testimony that would protect that Muslim's right, he has to go to the judge, even if the judge doesn't summon him. Or it could be that someone forced him to drink alcohol by threatening him to drink it, or otherwise he would be killed. Also, if the judge knows that a person drank alcohol, but not through witnesses and not through the confession of the one who drank the alcohol, in this case, the judge does not order to punish such a person with the prescribed religious punishment, hadd. Because in similar cases, the judge cannot rely only on what he knows to carry out the punishment. The one who drinks alcohol is not punished while he is drunk, because the purpose of punishing him is to humiliate him so that he does not do it again, and to let him feel the pain. And if he is drunk, this does not happen. The instrument used for whipping, as far as the thickness is concerned, is mid-size. The thickness is something in between a thin branch and a thick stick. And it is not very soft and not very hard. Moreover, when a person is punished by the ruler by being whipped, the one who is carrying out the punishment does not hit him on the same place. Rather, he hits him on different organs, because if he hits him in one place, this might lead to killing him. Also, he does not hit him on the sensitive areas, that is, the areas that if he were to hit him on, he would die, such as the lower part of the neck, the heart, or the sexual parts. It is not permissible to hit him on those parts. Also, it is not permissible to hit him on his face, because the Prophet ﷺ said, as was narrated by Imam Muslim, that if one of you hits another, let him avoid the face. The whipped person is not forced to tie his hands, and the light clothes that he is wearing are not taken off of him, because these light clothes do not stop the effect of hitting. When the ruler punishes a person in the suitable way, ta'zir, that is, a way that the ruler considers suitable for a matter which does not have a prescribed punishment, this does not mean that the sin committed is an enormous sin. It might be either a small sin or an enormous sin. If someone takes something that harms the mind, but it is not an intoxicating drink, like drugs, marijuana, and the like, the ruler punishes that person with a suitable punishment, but not with the had prescribed religious punishment, because this is not an intoxicating drink. It was narrated in a hadith that if a person drinks alcohol, his prayer will not be rewarded for 40 days. Some scholars of hadith said this hadith is confirmed, and some said that it is not confirmed. So there is a difference of opinion regarding this matter. By that we conclude the chapter of punishment for alcohol intoxicating drinks. Now the next chapter is pertaining to the punishment of the punishment for theft, and then it has a specific definition. Theft has a specific definition. There's specific conditions, and we'll talk about that next week, inshallah. Then after that is the punishment for waylaying. Then the chapter of self-defense and liability for destruction caused by one's animal. Then fighting the Muslim rebels. Then the punishment for apostasy. Then the punishment for abandoning the prayer. And then the chapter of jihad. So inshallah we'll get to that next week, inshallah. We'll continue